Alright, what's up guys? Jagged here, bringing you the latest Diablo IV quarterly update for February 2020. So I have already briefly read over this, but if you guys are okay with it, we'll maybe do something similar to our last video and just go ahead and read over it together. And if you are curious, this is their third update they have posted, and so this is nothing new as of right now. So if you're curious what the last one was about, feel free to check the description. I'll put a link to my last video there. So for a quick overview, we'll be reading a brief introduction to quarterly updates by Luis Barriga, the game director, as well as information about UI design, controller support, and co-op by Angela Del Priore. If that's how you pronounce that, I apologize if that's not the case. She is the lead UI designer, and we'll also be discussing Monster Family and Design, highlighting the Cannibal Tribes by Candace Thomas, who is the senior encounter designer. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and read over this. And actually, I'm going to read it from the Diablo fans page. I find it a little bit more easier to read, I guess. I'm not sure if it's just the blue text, but hey, there we go. All right, so the introduction here. So hello and welcome to the new blog section of the Diablo IV website. The Diablo IV development team has been hard at work since BlizzCon, and we are all still incredibly energized by the response to our announcement and follow-up blog posts. We can tell you are all excited to see more info coming from the team and about how the game is coming together. Well, we have some great news for you today. We are stoked to deliver the first of our quarterly blog updates with you, and this one happens to be a double header. First, we have word from our lead UI designer, Angela Del Priore, with some super cool updates on post-BlizzCon feedback, controller support on PC, and a deep dive into couch co-op. If you'd like to jump to her update right now, click here. So we'll go ahead, we're just gonna read everything down from the top here. Our second update is by our senior encounter design, Candace Thomas. She shares a first look at a new set of enemies, the Cannibal Tribes of the Dry Steppes. You'll see some amazing new art by Igor Sidorenko, read some of our in-world lore, and even watch a video of these flesh eaters in action. Check out Candace's update, click here. So we'll go ahead and I guess I don't have to read that. We hope you enjoy both of these updates. We're looking forward to your thoughts and comments on them, and please also let us know the sorts of things you'd like to hear about next. We realize many of you are curious about different aspects of the development process. Some of you love reading and rereading lore, while others of you may geek out over item tooltips or want to hear some early music tracks. So be sure to tell us what excites you most. Our goal for these updates is to cover a wide variety of subjects and over the course of development, share something exciting for everyone. Once again, we want to thank you all for sharing this journey with us. See you in hell. Luis Barriga. Nice. Good sign off there. Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump into UI design, controller support, and co-op. So for anyone who isn't familiar with user interface, our team is responsible for communicating game systems to the player and providing players with the inputs they need to engage with those systems. So while we are focused on helping the player achieve what they want to do, we also need to balance that goal against the vision for the game while maintaining the clarity of what our interface is trying to communicate. As you might imagine, this means that we iterate on our UI regularly. As systems change, the UI changes with it, which can in turn cause player goals to change. The UI then needs to adapt while keeping our visual language consistent across the entire game. Visual polish is one of the last things we focus on for this reason. Please keep that in mind as we talk through and show some of our in-progress work, but feel free to let us know your thoughts. All right, so BlizzCon demo feedback. So it's been a few months since BlizzCon, but we still wanted to take a moment to address some of the UI-specific feedback we received from the demo and announcement videos. Inventory. We saw a lot of feedback around the inventory, either regarding its coloring, the style or size of the item icons, or overall aesthetic. To avoid interrupting gameplay with pockets of inventory management, we are not planning on bringing back different sized items. However, we've been tackling the other points from a variety of directions. So as we heard there, the icons and sizes of the items in the inventory will be single slot, if you will. Armor is being the same size as gloves, pants, gloves, etc., weapons. So that is a decision they've made. I'm not sure if they're willing to be flexible on that, but I know for many of us, I personally am a proponent of bigger items such as like weapons, so we can really get a good feel of the art behind them. However, this might be okay if we have a lot of contrast and depth within the images themselves and the icons. I am among many other people are one that feels the bigger, an armor, gloves being and rings being relatively small, armors and big axes, showing the detail of the art that was put into them. And I think in a way that adds character to the game and I guess immersion, if you will. I do understand the negative aspects of that, requiring, or having less inventory space to hold on to items. But there are ways around that, such as with Grim Dawn having multiple tabs and the auto sort function or feature. I guess single slot items. Tell me how you guys feel about that down below. And let's continue. Did I read this part? So I don't think I did. With item icons, we'd initially pursued a painterly style to stay in line with the overall art direction of the game. And we're finding that it doesn't come across as well when we are talking about small elements in the UI. We are now exploring another approach more directly based off of 3D models to give them natural texture and realism. Just while we're here, I'll go ahead and zoom in. So as you guys can probably tell, these backgrounds are different colors. It's very subtle. So this is more of a, I don't know what you want to call it, gray, tan, brown, if you will. More of a bluish hint here. Yellow, that looks like a dark green, and then a legendary like color if you might see in D3. And also there's actually some borders around here. And I believe the article will go and discuss a little bit about that and why the colors, they've lowered the saturation on them. All right, so I mean, just what I just said. So we've also toned down the brightness and saturation of the icon backgrounds, as well as added secondary visual cues for indicating rarity via the border decoration. This way, we've made rarity indicators visually more subtle, but hopefully with a wider range of accessibility. And again, we'll go ahead and look at that one more time. So I mean, it is tough to see, and maybe it's my monitor. I have some of the brightness turned down in contrast. So we have this border here. As like one pointy projection in the corner here, and it's yellow, and the one on the right has multiple projections. It's a darker color, indicating likely, I would assume, a more rare item or maybe a legendary. And this, maybe I could presume that it's a set item with the green. I can't quite tell what the border is. Oh, you know what? That looks like the same border as the legendary, actually. Anyways. And guys, when I'm editing this video, I'll try my best to add higher res images just to show you guys a little bit better. So we received some non-specific feedback about the inventory, but we had guesses as to what people were reacting to based on our own observations. We reorganized the layout of the inventory to what is hopefully a more balanced composition, and across the board, we're looking at the color spread and contrast levels of individual UI pieces. So here is the current character screen, which, as you guys can tell, is different than the one that was displayed at BlizzCon during the gameplay, when they were, the current gameplay footage that is available from there. We had a vertical inventory rather than a horizontal like here. I think I prefer the horizontal. It's maybe just because I'm what I'm used to. I'm certainly not against the vertical, but I think this one is, this is more relatable to us, I guess. As you can also see, the attack and defense and life, so there's not a whole lot of extra attributes there. There is a details panel, which we don't have access to right now, so hopefully they'll still add some more stuff to that, because I think that's a big one a lot of us are passionate about, is just having more stats, if you will. So that's all we can see here. Obviously, since the last update, they did mention they're adding some angelic and demonic and ancestral type stats. And if you don't remember exactly what that was, feel free to take that last video I made, link in the description there, and that goes over that a little bit in the article as well. One thing I want to mention here is, and this was the same at BlizzCon, is that there's no shoulder slot. There's also no glove slot, and it looks like there's no belt slot either, which I'm not sure how I feel about. Honestly, guys, at least for me, the shoulder armor art, for me, has always been almost like a character defining piece of gear in that for my character. Shoulders are just always badass in World of Warcraft, in Diablo 3. I mean, I guess a little bit, less so in Diablo 2, but but still, I just mean, if I'm not sure why they decided to remove the shoulder items. Actually, I do have an idea, possibly why. And this is after me reading a little bit on Reddit the last couple days, which is certainly a possibility, in that the shoulder slot might be a microtransaction piece, since shoulders, the art of shoulders are really so awesome at times. It's unfortunate for, the typical player base if that is the case, because I think a lot of us really like that gritty, gnarly shoulder art and really defines our character. But if that's one way they need to make money, if they are doing microtransactions, which might ultimately be good long term, so they can still support the game. That's just a little bit of it takes me back a little bit, just like, wow, okay, that kind of sucks, but I'll try to be on board the best I can with that. But another thing that's a con to that actually is that we objectively have less item slots for gear. I always think more slot, the more things that we can customize our character, the better in general. But let's go ahead and continue on from there. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, equipment, consumables, quest, and materials. So these are all little mini different tabs. I feel like that's a pretty small inventory as far as the amount of slots given. We hope to both hone in our goal of gritty, realistic UI while balancing ease of use, as the inventory screen is something our players will probably interact with the most. We really appreciate your feedback in this area. Rebinding left click. A surprising number of players asked for the option to rebind their primary skill to anything but the left mouse button, so they could separate moving from attacking. Adding more flexibility to our binding options had already been on our radar for a while, and the demo feedback helped confirm that this was a customization feature that players really wanted. In addition to giving players the freedom to assign any skill to any slot from the get-go, all skill slots can now have their keys rebound. We're committed to supporting skill rebinding for controllers as well. So if for some of you, if you didn't quite understand that, I actually haven't personally had this issue playing any ARPGs, but I know it's a really, really common thing that individuals ask for if it's not already in their game. When you're moving around a character and you're using left click, but left click is also a spell or a skill. Say you're trying to escape from a mob or you're trying to kite effectively. If you left click and you're trying to move away, but accidentally click a mob, you're gonna attack instead of actually move away or towards the creature. And so it can get you killed. It doesn't do exactly as you intended. And so that's I think one of the main reasons why they're doing that. So you can have a dedicated move button instead of having it be a skill. All right, so the action bar. We went through a lot of iteration on this piece of UI. The left corner configuration came about because we wanted to try clearing the central combat area and freeing up the bottom of the screen where isometric camera already sees less. Okay. However, based on the usability test results, the team's feedback, and the feedback we received from the demo, we're going to move the default position of the action bar back to the bottom center for PC players. Okay, that's cool. We have the option. Well, that was maybe a spoiler. We will have the option of doing the corner or the center, and so that's a really good thing. And guys, just so you know, while I'm editing this and I'm reading that, I'll be displaying these images so you can see. That's not all, though. The preferred position changes to the left corner when people play farther away from the screen. This doesn't come as a surprise given the shift in viewing angle, but it does mean that the center configuration isn't a majority winner on PC since we're supporting controller input. So while we will only stick to the corner configuration on consoles, we will offer both left and center positions options as PC. So sweet. So if you want in the center, you can. If you want on the left side, you can. So supporting controllers on PC. This is the first time a Diablo game is being developed simultaneously for both PC and consoles, but the decision to support controller input on PC is what caused the greater paradigm shift for us. We wanted to give players the ability to switch between the two options freely, so our UI needed to be unified enough that swapping hardware inputs on the fly wouldn't throw people completely off kilter. A unified UI means our layouts are more grid-based for ease of navigation, but it doesn't necessarily mean an identical interaction flow. We try to maintain this sort of approach of keeping established keyboard and mouse conventions while creating controller-friendly shortcuts or alternate flows throughout the game. Controller support shouldn't be a limiter on how complex our game can be. It just means that we have more paths that we need to consider. It's not a simple undertaking, but we are really striving for a native feel for both types of inputs. All right, so unfortunately they don't have a high-res image of this picture here, but I'll scroll in and zoom in anyways. So they did mention developing them on a console for controller shouldn't really limit the game's complexity, or whatever verbiage that was used. I hope that's the case. I think a lot of us are concerned that developing this for a controller/console and PC at the same time limits the PC a little bit. Again, we obviously have far more buttons on our keyboard than are on a controller. Yeah, so that's just a concern I think a lot of us have. Obviously, I want to have it a great experience for console players too. I just hope it doesn't dumb down a little bit the experience on PC. Okay, so couch co-op UI. We know many players enjoyed couch co-op in Reaper of Souls, and that the biggest complaint was the inability to do anything while one local player had a UI screen open. When the topic of couch co-op came up early on in development, we looked at the number of people who utilized this feature in Diablo 3 and found that the 2-player setup accounted for an overwhelming majority. For Diablo 4, we decided to focus on improving the favored 2-player co-op experience and set up our core progression UI screens such that they can be opened independently or at the same time. Okay, so this looks like a picture of the screen if it was 2-player, and so that's the size of the UI on each side. I do want to take a moment and take a look at this new background, at least the art in the back of the talent tree. I haven't compared this tree itself to the one at BlizzCon. I don't know the difference of this between the one at BlizzCon. The tree itself looks very similar. Obviously the background art is different. So I think we'll go ahead and compare these two side by side when I'm editing, and we'll take a look to see if anything has changed. Hopefully it has, because that's a major gameplay system that need a little bit more customization. Adding more customization and more skill points options, that's pretty small for an entire character. So again, game is early in development, is what they claim. And so I'll take their word for it, and hopefully that will be reiterated more on in the future, or iterated on rather. So we iterate on this interface regularly, and ease of interaction comes before visual polish, but we still welcome impressions at any stage. Everyone approaches the game with different set of experiences and consequently different expectations for how things should look or work, and it's always interesting to hear these perspectives. All right, Monster Family and Design Highlight, Cannibals by Candace Thomas, Senior Encounter Designer. If you had the chance to watch our World and Lore panel during BlizzCon, you learned that monsters in Diablo 4 are classified into families. In our various panels, we cover different monster families such as the Fallen, who are returning to once again terrorize Sanctuary, and the Drowned, who are a brand new threat plaguing the shores of this world. We touched on their story, combat abilities, the regions they inhabit, and how they interact with one another in a meaningful way. Now we would like to give you a look into a new family, the Cannibals. And we'll go ahead and show the sound turned off though, I don't even want to risk the copyright strike here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play this from here. And I think it'll obviously show some of the quote characters in the family of the Cannibals. They look pretty sweet. Like, they definitely look mean, they definitely look scary, mainly because they're armor. Yeah, what is your opinion, guys? I think ultimately, I have a good impression. I think it looks cool, but obviously you guys let me know your comments down below. Okay, so what is a monster family and why does it matter? Before we dive into these specific mechanics of the cannibal family, let's take a moment to talk about our design philosophy when it comes to monsters. In the bestiary of Diablo, I always want to say bestiary. In the bestiary of Diablo 3, we classified monsters into broad categories like demon and holy, undead, humanoid, or wildlife. These monsters served as an anchor to the story by adding to the overall setting and tone, which made the whole game feel complete. In Diablo 4, the vast and seamless world we created necessitates a slightly different approach to world building and storytelling. It requires building Sanctuary as a living, breathing character, especially through its creatures. Since we have everything from serene ocean cliffsides to the gaping maw of hell itself, nice. What does that mean for? Is it bestiary? I don't even know how you pronounce that, man. Let's go with bestiary, because I know I've heard that before. It might be, anyways. Well, to fill those areas and make them feel real, we definitely needed to have more non-aggressive wildlife than in Diablo 3. but never fear, we still have plenty of monsters to fight. Every monster has been reimagined, but in a darker, more gritty art style. We have lovingly handcrafted every creature you'll encounter from the ground up, and that includes demons, NPCs, act bosses, and even the skittering critters you can crush underfoot. Though we still pay tribute to some hallmark gameplay, such as fallen shamans resurrecting other fallen, we have completely reimagined things in other places. To have these creatures feel more sophisticated and robust, we designed them in what we call, quote, monster families and archetypes. Each family has a different combat style and feel. For example, the Drowned family has 5 members in various archetypes. It has like the Bruiser, ranged combat, melee combat, Swarmer, and dungeon boss. So as you can see down below, this is a work in progress of some of the character art for the Drowned. I think the Drowned look freaking sick. Like, these guys are terrifying. Like, no offense to these guys, but they're far more terrifying than the Cannibals. I know they're, different, but that stuff's badass, dude. Each archetype plays a different role in combat. Swarmers strike in groups, making AoE attacks feel satisfying. Bruisers are large monsters with high health values, which will make damage over time abilities feel good. Melee combat units act as shields by standing in the way of projectiles for their ranged counterparts. That's interesting. Situations like this provide the player with interesting positional dilemmas if they want to focus fire on ranged units. When adding all this together, each encounter with the Drowned will be slightly different with regards to player positioning and choice of attack. These rich and varied combat experiences are the power of a monster family. Okay. I'd be curious to see how the actual AI, I almost said UI, AI turns out with these. And also, I really hope that we're not plowing through groups of these in like a half a second flat. Definitely want some slower gameplay, just so we can be a little more methodical about this stuff. But yeah, if it actually does require some skill and some self-awareness of where the enemies are and where we are, that's pretty cool. That's the thing is, some of these mechanics, guys, at least for me, it's really hard to know if this is, it seems like a good idea, and I'm sure it is a great idea, but I can't really think critically and deep enough without having really experienced it and seeing what it lays out to be to really make a good judgment on it. But superficially, it seems cool. Again, as long as there's some decent health pools so we don't just mow down the screen in one skill. All right, who are the Cannibals? So the one that they're highlighting today. Corpses riddled with bite marks, splintered bones scraped clean of marrow, tongues sawed off and eyes gouged out of their skulls. Wow, that's descriptive and awesome. These are the bloody fingerprints the cannibals leave behind, if they leave behind anything at all. No one is certain where they come from, but some legends claim they are a former tribe of barbarians, banished from Ariat years ago. Whether their cannibalism led to their exile or developed out of desperation afterward is unknown. The outcasts brought their endless hunger to the dry steppes, and from there spread to the far corners of the world to prey on lonesome caravans and unsuspecting villages. The few who have survived encounters with these butchers share the same stories. They tell of the mad fire that burns in the eyes of all cannibals, of how eating the flesh of their victims in battle only fuels their hunger for more. They whisper of the unlucky souls spared in the attacks, hauled off like livestock for the raiders to pick clean until their next hunt. And then they say no more. The silence speaks for them. Sometimes it is better to die than to live and remember. I'm gonna go and try this name, Leah Kaltib, but I apologize if I butchered that name. Now that we've introduced some new lore about this family, we can dive into how we try to use them to give a cohesive experience narratively, while also providing the peaks and valleys of combat expected in a hack and slash ARPG. What does this mean for cannibal combat design? How do we convey their story through combat? We took a couple of approaches. So weaponry. The cannibal family has 4 members. They each have their own unique weapon and a significantly different silhouette or stance to help differentiate them from one another. There are 2 standard melee combatants, one wielding a 2-handed greatsword cleaver, which delivers a slow, sweeping frontal attack, and the other using a lightweight halberd, which allows them to leap at players from a great distance and crash down with a devastating attack. Okay, so this is obviously, the 2-handed greatsword cleaver and animation. Bruiser uses a spiked club in each hand to deliver intense blows that will stun players if they aren't paying attention. By contrast, the dual axe-wielding Swarmers can unleash a flurry of frontal attacks that will quickly kill if left unchecked. However, this is a less binary pass-fail than the Bruiser's stun attack. If the player finds himself surrounded by flurrying Swarmers, getting hit by the Bruiser's dazing blow would remove all possibility of escape. Nice, that's pretty cool. It's a combination of attacks like these that make this family so deadly. Let's go and pull this up really quick here. All right, so that must be the Bruiser. He's holding those two spiked clubs. We have this greatsword cleaver. Anyways, all right, so here we have, this must be the halberd. Oh, that looks just like an axe. It doesn't really look like a halberd, right? I don't know the exact definition of a halberd, but typically I think of a longer polearm. Okay, by design, the Cannibal family has no ranged units. Instead, they spring at the player with supernatural swiftness. Some may close the gap by leaping over obstacles and would-be competitors, while others will swiftly and deftly maneuver through other monsters to get first blood. This provides a very different experience and gives the player less time to make thoughtful positioning decisions, thus making combat with these flesh eaters feel frenetic. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for staying a while and listening. Nice Deckard Cain reference there. It is the end of the video, so I just want to mention a couple quick things. I mean, let's be real, guys. There is so much to talk about regarding Diablo 4 right now. One thing I'm a little surprised still, again, guys, there's a lot left. There's a lot of work left to do. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they still have the flashing effect in the game. This was a major piece of feedback that was given post BlizzCon, or maybe it's an option you can click on and off. So, and maybe it's turned on here, or maybe they just haven't gotten to it yet. So, I hope that that's an option. Destroys immersion for me. They should be aware of that by now. Another thing that is not talked about a whole lot, but I'm wondering your guys' opinion, and I'm just gonna give my personal opinion here. I would really like the option to be able to zoom out further from my character a little bit more. There are hardware limitations for it, but Grim Dawn does it. Path of Exile 2 is now increasing their zoom distance. During the world boss encounter Ashava fight, you are zoomed out a ton more, with still land density, ground density, increased field of view with no noticeable decrease in frames from what I could see on the gameplay footage. I feel like this one is actually a bigger one than people think. I know with me personally, playing Diablo 3, and the distance from camera looks very similar to Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, I prefer it zoomed out a little bit more. And I really hope there's an option for us to do that. I always feel like I'm just too close to the character. Yeah. Anyways, that's just my personal opinion. So overall, I am happy to see this update. They did specifically mention that these updates will cover a wide variety of topics. Many of us are fiending to see a little bit more of how itemization is shaping up since the massive amounts of feedback post BlizzCon, and also after the last Diablo 4 update regarding, the other systems, including the itemization. Speaking of, that is likely why they did not feel the need they needed to address more at this time. I suppose. I think that would make sense. What are some other features you guys would like to see talked about or implemented within the game itself? Let me know down in the comments below. All right, I think we're gonna wrap that one up today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.